Oh man, I can send you so many. I can send you so many screenshots, even from the current regime in '79 when things were called out for announcements they made, where they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't think about that." Then okay, here comes the next mail.
Yeah, exactly. It happens a lot. And it's what I call like a big picture perspective, but it really, I think, directly connects back to the expectation setting at the beginning. And like you had mentioned with the content creators, there's nothing out there for people to even know to have expectations for it. And that's the challenge is nobody knows the massive amount of effort, physical and emotional effort it requires to um, be a server leader or a kingdom leader versus an alliance leader versus a member. Like it is dramatically different. And it's not fun all the time either.
Oh man, no, 100%. It's yeah. I it's almost it almost reminds me of like you're a district manager somewhere and you're just hoping that when you wake up the next day that you're gonna have no complaints, no problems, and then you can actually get stuff done because
Yeah, that'd be nice.
what often happen it would be nice. What often happens I find is that there are some days, but the amount of days where literally nothing is kind of waiting on you. Like when I wake up, like when I was doing everything I was for '79, I'd wake up the majority of the days. And there might be a few things, and then lesser of those days there might be more things. But you kind of almost take it as though, okay, well, here's a post-it note that's now been kind of stamped on your desk of this is something that needs to be addressed, it needs to be discussed, it needs to
Hmm.
be talked about, you need to go have a conversation with someone, you need to put out an announcement, whatever it may be. You know, I would often wake up every day with at least one thing. Now I will say, there were some days where, at least maybe in the first half of the day, I didn't have anything, and I'm like, oh my god, this is great! I can get some stuff done now that I have on the docket, that I have backlogged of things we need to do for the kingdom. Maybe I
Yep.
can spend some more time recruiting. Maybe I can send some messages out to some players. Maybe I can write up some mails for events that we can start using for synchronized templates across alliances. I mean,
Yep.
these are just some things that literally 99.99999, like if I could just repeat that, let me just say 9.999 repeating of the
Hmm.
player base has no idea, to your point, of the effort that goes into creating this sustainable product, this
Yep.
great quality environment that you are in. It doesn't just get built overnight. And to
Yep.
me, that's the thing that I try to show. And I could do more of it, but I have shown a little bit of it on what, like, I did a video called "A Day in the Life," right? A day in the life of managing a kingdom. It was a while ago, and I probably should do a new one. But that was just one example of kind of what goes into what you do on a daily basis. Like if you look at my rock videos, I did a video that was about 50 minutes on how to lead an alliance. And some people might look at that and think to themselves, they look at the amount of time and like, man, dude, that's really long. You probably could have done that in 10 minutes. No,
No.
guy or girl, kindly, or lady, I could not have. Like, and that's the thing is that, and if you look at the comments on the video, people are like, dude, this is the most detailed quality breakdown of what actually a leader has to do. Thank you so much for putting this out. Like, I get those types of comments on those videos because people appreciate and they can recognize, probably because they have led before, right? Which is probably for the most part why I get those types of specific comments. But people, just the general population, has no idea the amount of actual effort, as you said,
Yep.
that really goes into certain positions, let alone a position above an alliance leader, which is kind of like your district manager, right? Your kingdom manager. And
Yep.
that is something that, the fact is, until you do it, or until you try to do it, you will never understand. Or I should
I
say,
agree
the
that
likelihood
fully.
of you never understanding is high. I'll say that.
And it's not for everybody either. That is extremely clear.
Yeah.
I think so. A good example is we're working on building another high competitive alliance on S8, right? So developing that and getting that foundation there, doing it the right way, knowing your lessons learned, right? So working on all of that, and KE comes up, and then it comes into Castle Tiers, and you would think this is a simple thing, and it turned into a very very large thing. just because people don't understand the greater concept of, okay, you have to balance between these new players who are growing and these, T7s. Like, you can't allow a T7 to go and zero a T4, because then your T4s are going to say, you know what, that's a horrible kingdom to go to because you can't grow and you'll just get leveled by the whales and have no chance. And then people are like, well, then we need targets. And then the T6s are smart and bubble because they know they're going to get leveled by the T7s, but the T7s want targets and they're developed and they forget what it's like to have to grow. And then understanding that the T7 should be able to fight T7s and even some T6s for rallies and stuff like that. And getting them to grasp the concept that you want to fight, you shouldn't bubble, because if you bubble all the time, you're not going to learn how to compete against whales and people that are bigger than you, and then understanding the elements within there. That's what KE's for, right?
Yeah.
Is your the time to practice all of that. And so making sure that the rules don't hinder it is a struggle.
100%. Oh god. Oh man. Why haven't we talked like this lately? Man, this is. Oh man, I love having these. Like, I love having. First and foremost, I think anyone can appreciate. And hang on one sec. I just want to put this out real quick before I give you more of my appreciation. Let me see. One sec here. I just want to.
You're fine.
See.
I crashed your party.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I just wanted to.
You're good.
Put a shout out on the server. But yeah, no, I think the KE stuff you were saying 100% spot on.
That's like one example of a million.
Oh yeah, just go to the list. It is. It's. I mean, yeah, it's funny because so like one of the things that's happening right now in 79. So which is funny because. Right, me and if you looked at the last video I posted in 79 for, God, I'm trying to think right now. It was, sorry, yeah. So the last video I posted in 79 was about me leaving, like just the expectation kind of falling, right? Why I left and everything,
Yeah.
or more so why the mutiny forced me out. It had been two and a half months, right, since I posted another video talking about it, and then I post my most recent video about it, and I started talking with a few more people and having a few more conversations here, and then what happened is Ghost and me went to go join the new Discord. Like we just had never gone in there. He stopped playing his account pretty much 3-4 months ago, and I was just doing my dailies and focusing on the rock stuff. And so I never thought that I would really kind of re-engage with 79 the way that I have, or that I had been doing a little bit more now. And so the 2.5 months passed. I posted my last video a little while ago about 79, and then some more people reached out to me to ask. Me and Ghost rejoined. Not rejoined, but we finally joined the new 79 Discord. And again, completely respectful in there after we got tagged. I'll be honest, the Discord is super bare bones. It's not something. If you look at my Discord, or I should say, if you were in 79 and you looked at how we had our management channel set up, our event categories, like other things, you would say things are very organized. When I went into their Discord, right, very disorganized, or just not a lot. Like I said, bare bones and raw. There's just not a lot there, and so we so when we went around, right, people were I didn't say anything in the Discord, right? I was just looking around to look. That was it.
Yep.
I get pinged by a few people. A few people message me while I'm there, and then Ghost he writes his feedback piece. Like he just gave some feedback from being able to read, because they have their council chat open, so we could read anyone that's that's a member of 79. After you verify, you can read their public council chat that they have now. They probably still have one on private, but they at least have a main one on the public side that you can read that they do actively talk in. So we're reading it, and we're just going back and forth, just giving our thoughts on kind of how the discussion's playing out. I'm going to say that politely, and then
I got you.
and then Ghost responds. He says something in the general chat, and what he gives is what I would classify as just objective, neutral feedback based on what he was able to read. Right? It wasn't saying, "Hey, this person sucks, they're bad," or "You don't know what you're doing." He literally just gave objective feedback and constructive feedback at that. And after he did, their Discord just started going super active. People were coming on and responding, having some conversations, right? Some respectful, some not. And then after that, they opened a suggestions channel, like a suggestions feedback channel. And the first post that one of the admins made is that, hey, this is a suggestions and feedback channel. So some people start providing their sugs, and then you have one of the council members, who's an R5 of an alliance, who's very outspoken, very abrasive, if you will, with how he comes off at times, which is more often than not. He makes a post there and says something to the extent of, this is a suggestions channel, right? Not to kind of hear your feedback, drivel of complaints. And I'm over here like, dude, can you not read, bro? Like, are we not in the same Discord? Like, you don't have the capacity to just... But again, this is what it showed, right? What it showed is that, one, they're not all on the same page. Their council. They're not all on the same page about 100%. I mean, who would have thought? But they're not on the same page about their understanding of when they introduce certain things, so everyone has a clear expectation on what something is being used for or not being used for. Two, it showed that some of the people in management, being this individual particularly, doesn't care to read pings, which is extremely important when you are a member of management in your Discord. Like, sure, you can give me... the understanding is that, yes, not every single player, even if they join the Discord, are going to read the announcements, right? You could say 20 to 50% of the people that join the Discord, at minimum, will read the announcements that you put out. Understand that.
Let's hope.
Yeah, understand that. That's why I gave a super wide margin. But if you are an officer or a leader...
Requirement.
Yeah, I mean, the expectation is there that you are going to read... You read every Kingdom mail, every Alliance mail, you read every Discord announcement, and if you don't, with respect, kick rocks, man. Like, go play Farmville. Like, that is an expectation that you should have. Now, it's not really... I don't know if I would say it's a requirement, even though that can be implied. It is more about... You should... It's not about, like, it's a chore. It's about you should love doing what you're doing. Like, I don't read announcements because I feel it's a requirement. I read them because I want to read them. Because I want to be informed. I want to be able to do the best job that I could do when it comes to informing the player base. If I don't read all the announcements, how am I going to know what the current updates are? How am I going to be able to respond to a player who asks me a question or who wants clarification on something if I don't even have all of the up-to-date information? That's how I like to look at it a little bit more so from. And what my hopeful expectation is on that, if you are someone who is a member of management, you are an extension of the lead, you're an extension of the kingdom manager, you are an extension of what the standards and the goals and the policies are
On your server.
that have been described on the server
Hmm.
100%. So you should, I mean, you are essentially a part of your job is customer service. You don't think I do customer service? You don't think I do tech support? I do it all bloody day. That's like
Yep.
90% of my job, really, when I'm in the kingdom. You think I have as much time to play as you do? 100% I don't. You think I have as much time to go and socialize and interact with everyone, or focus on having conversations in world chat? Hell no, I don't. Would I love to? Of course I would. But that's not what it takes to keep the cogs spinning in the kingdom.
Yep.
And so for me, but that's something that happened on the 79 Discord, and that was the response that we got from this player. And I just thought to myself, dude, you are not meant to be in management, like, at all. Like, you are someone I would literally drop kick in your left ovary if I could, to let you know that you can exit the door for management 100%.
So
um
what we
yeah.
do for situations like that, and so the officers that we have in our leadership team, which is bigger than the R5 list that the game allows you to have, because there's
Yeah.
just so much to do. Like, we have specific people for marketing, specific people for HR, specific people for events, specific people for, and then within the specific people for events, you have the events distributed amongst them so that you can ensure consistency, you can ensure a standard process. They're required to document everything so that it's repeatable. I mean, it's all of that good stuff. But for the announcements and like patch notes, things like that, even though they're crap, I have a basically a TLDR page for the officers of, here's what you need to know, and here's what impacts your life and what you should be able to convey to other people. And it makes it way easier because it's less time consuming for them to have to search it out and yada yada.
Yeah.
And then the expectations are set that this is what you're supposed to know.
Yep. Yeah, I did that. So I did that in the beginning, before we even made it, day one, and I reiterated this as well after. So I wrote up I wrote up like an officer announce. Like, we have an officer announcement channel, in the management
Hmm.
section. So I wrote something out that basically says, like, look, here are your expectations, right? Here are your kind of tasks, duties, responsibilities, and here's the expectations that come along with those. From being
Yeah.
in management, right? And then I even did something where I asked people to check off. Like, I want you to sign. I want you to read this and sign off on it, right? So we had like a little green check, reaction roll. And so
Yeah.
I said, I want everyone to sign off on this, because I just want you I want you to want to do this, right? So by you signing off, that is saying that you want to be here, you want to put the time in, you want to put the work in to build something great, right? You want to be a part of this
Yep.
team. We're not forcing you. If you don't believe in it, let us know. You can just be a member. That's no problem. But I think to your point as well is, we can do the best job that we can of informing, of educating, of setting appropriate expectations, right, without forcing or making it feel like it's a mandatory thing that you have to do, or we're just going to disown you like like my second grade teacher. But point is you. I think the challenge here is that, and the challenge is that, more often than not, you have a healthy portion of players that want to be officers just to have the title, or
Oh my God.
or you
Yes.
have officers that are like, oh, I'm really good at doing this one thing. I'm just going to do this thing. Is that cool? And then they don't do anything else that are like
Yep.
standard minimum tasks that you would expect any officer to do.
Yep.
And so I think those are those are really kind of almost the foundation. Like, those are the entry level challenges, right? Before
Yep.
you even decide if you want to be an officer, have an understanding of what actually goes into being an officer. And that was one of the reasons why I made the videos I did. Like, I have rock videos that are actually very relatable to IK as well, where I specifically check off or I have a video that says, here's how to be an officer. Here's how to do everything you need to do, and understanding the time commitment that comes with it. And then I have the leader video. I say, hey, here's how you can be a leader. Like, my officer video is maybe about 30 minutes. My leader video is about 50 minutes. But it also sets time commitment expectations. Like, here's how much time you probably will put in. Here are all the things that you really have to do on a daily basis to and again, that, and to be fair, it really, I mainly focused on what you do within the alliance. I think I might have actually forgot to kind of talk about everything that comes with what you may do on Discord or outside of the game that factors and helps inside the game. But yeah, I think just having something like that that can set that expectation on what you're doing, how much time you're putting in, is something that I think the majority of officers, or people that, I should say, the people that want to be officers, they just don't know until they're actually in it.
I agree. And I think so I'm extremely transparent. Whenever someone says, "Oh, I want to be an officer," I tell them how miserable things are in regards to certain areas and how much patience it requires. The fact that you are a representative of not only the alliance but the server, so you have to be able to maintain composure even in situations that are totally ludicrous, and all of these different things, and then understanding also, and this is a huge factor of the IK community and the impacts that that can have on you based on their reactions. So, um, my personal experience, which you're probably familiar with, is not all been positive. So you have to be able to understand that some of that's going to happen. I mean, if you're in a high alliance, you're going to be a target for people, and some people are really not nice. And so if that's not something that you feel like you can deal with well, you shouldn't be in that role because you're going to be put in a higher light than if you were just a member. It just is what it is. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I totally gave you the amen in general shots. Just like just can I get a hallelujah?
It's difficult. I mean, it's extremely difficult, and I think that there's I question my sanity on why I continue to do this a lot, but I do care about it, and
Yeah.
that's why I keep going on and doing it. And I see the potential in areas and the cooperation, and when you have that picture of this is what it could look like if we could just get there, it would be amazing, right? But that path to get there is brutal.
It is. It is. It's just yeah. Sometimes it's yeah. I think for me, with and I know your situation is a little different. Because I know you were in '79, but then kind of recently with that regime transfer had stepped up. In my example of usually what the typical play out is for me when we start out from doing being in that project phase, right? So we
Mhm.
are pre-planning before we even step foot in the kingdom. And
I
if you
think that poses a really big challenge for you too that I don't necessarily have, because people want to join S8, for example, because it's already got a reputation, or Slay because it's got a high number, or whatever it is. Whereas you guys are starting out fresh, so the people that you get in there don't necessarily have the commitment to the game that the people coming in to S8 would, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think another way to word that is, and I understand. I know where you're going with it. The way I would word that would be is that when you're starting in a new kingdom, it's new people, and because it's
Yep,
new people, you are basically resetting, having to do that re-education on on
absolutely.
on the entire player base. So it's to me that's just a realistic expectation. Like that's understood when I go in and do a project. I know that from day one that everything I worked on building up to set a high standard and with the level of detail, the explanation, the time we put in, everything, I'm gonna have to redo that all over again. Like I have no qualms about that. Like I know that is something we're gonna have to do. However, I do think that when you have that opportunity to reset, it really opens up your creativity on how you can do it faster and more efficient the next time.
And higher quality for sure. I
Yeah.
think lessons learned, right?
And Ghost can tell you, Ghost is strong. What's up? Ghost can tell you, me and him were the primary two people that when '79 started. If Ghost, if you want to give, I mean, I don't know, are you here, Ghost? Or I don't know if you can talk. Okay, okay, maybe he's just listening for now. Probably just wants to go get some tea or maybe a potty break. But
Don't lie,
go.
I thought it was like three of us in this call, so my bad.
Yeah, but Ghost would tell you as well. Like when 79 started, we were the two people who went around the first 2 or 3 days, and we messaged every lead. And we Ghost, are you back?
I am. I thought I was lagging a bit.
Okay, no, you're good. Yeah, Ghost. Yeah, why don't you share with Bunny, what I don't know how much you heard there, but like what was the process we did when we landed in 79 to try and ensure that we could spread the word and just give some insight into what we were coming in with.
Yeah, to set up the foundation.
About the main thing we did actually in the beginning is to just make sure everyone is informed. So we started with sending messages to all the alliance leads and some of the officers that we were able to get a hold of, and make sure we also invite them to the discords. We had separate categories set up for officers, leaders, and council, and we made sure that we were just started off on a good foot, right? That we were friendly with them, that we gave them access to resources which they can send in their alliances if they wanted to, and just generally creating a fun atmosphere for people to enjoy the game and at the same time learn as much as possible and get to know us as well and our group. I think that was the main thing that we started out doing.
Yeah.
And how successful was that initially?
Very. We had a lot of people join the discords in the first couple of days, and it just kept on going. And we also had quite a number of people from officers and leaders not in our jumper group reach out and wanting to be a part of the Discord in the management channels as well. That way we could just spread our information and our foundation with the rest of the server very easily.
Yeah.
If you had to go back and do it all over again, would you do it the same way?
Pretty much. Maybe just bring on board one or two more people to actually spread the messages. Maybe
So
one or two people is a bit much, but other than that.
Yeah. I think I tend to agree. I mean, there could have been maybe some wording changes, maybe some pieces or small bits of information that maybe we included. But I mean, what we did is we sent out a 2-part message. So we had about 990 characters we typed up, and they were in formatted posts, right? So we made sure it was formatted so it was easier to read, and then we sent them from the emulator so it would convert the format appropriately. And so we had 2-part messages, right, that we would send to every lead, and some of the officers, as Ghost mentioned, right, ones we could find if they posted in public chat somewhere or something that we saw they were an officer, then we'd reach out to them that way. Or if they were on the leaderboard as an officer that we could find. And so, but just doing that, to Ghost's point, yeah, we ended up getting, our initial plan was to split Zone 1 cities, to do one Zone 1 city, because there's 33 cities, so we wanted to have 33 active alliances, knowing that that's going to carry over to more longevity and player retention and activity over a longer period of time, right? Compared to if we just let it be a free for all, right? And then you only have 8 or 10 alliances that are capping the Zone 1 cities, right? The longer that more people are involved in, the higher chance we have of winning them over, right? Because there's a longer amount of time that they're able to see that, hey, these guys aren't just here to take everything, they actually do want to share, right? And they're creating a fair environment for everyone to do so. Like, those were some of the big mission statements, and that helped so much, especially if you just look at us being able to essentially build out 8 active alliances while working on a 9th at that time, right, up until I was forced out at that day 150. There was a fantastic track record that was going, and I think a lot of that to what Ghost articulated is a large part due to the fact that we spent that amount of time in the beginning, right? Because it wasn't us just I think it was day 2 or day 3. Ghost can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we reached out to maybe about 50, 60, 70 alliances, and then when we did it again a week later, we were able to reach out to the top 300. We did and this is the time we took. Like, we sat there and did this grunt work that not everyone's going to want to do. And so we took that time to do that. And I think that because we did that, and because we took the time to detail out who we were, how we were coming in, how we wanted to share, how we wanted everyone to build and be able to grow and develop, and giving brief insight into what are some of our hopeful expectations and standards were for the kingdom. I think that paid off greater dividends throughout the next few months, 100%. But I do think, if we wanted to, maybe next time we send 3 messages, right? Because maybe it's needed. I mean, that's a bit, but yeah, I think the template for what we did in the beginning was great.
So at what point do you think that started going a different direction?
As far as,
Well, it didn't end the way that you expected. So
well,
where was that diversion?
yeah, I think ending is relative, right? Because we already completed our goal. So everything I was getting after that was just
Okay.
icing on the cake at that point, right? Like the main goal of a project is to establish majority presence, which we did. Win COR, which we did, right? Have a COR rotation within our group, and then obviously from any of the other contributing alliances, which we did. We made it to day 90, which is when migration opened, right? So that to me is already a
Yep.
big milestone to make it that far. Um, we were
Oh, for sure.
we were able to get we were able to get, I don't even know, maybe it was like 400 or 500 players, like active players that came into the kingdom within our first recruiting season, that allowed for us to thoroughly build out. Which the 2 non-family alliances, we sent players to them as well to help them build up, right? So it was a matter of just having some patience, believing in the system, and that we were going to follow through on our word. Like, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't need to lie to anyone about that. I have a proven track record that can show that, I'm all about what I say. And so, even though don't get me wrong, that did not come without its own hurdles, right?
Oh, I know.
Anytime you feel like you're on the outside looking in, which is, yeah, if you're not a part of that initial big core group, right, you might think it's just a cool kids club. I do my best to make sure that it's not that, right, and it's not portrayed that way. To the alliances that are not, like, they don't have the family name, right, or they're not, they weren't in the Discord from a month ago, right? I always try
Hmm.
my best to make sure that there is not that isolation, right? That feeling of we're on this side, they're on this side of the room.
That's
And,
a lot of work, though, too. And that
oh,
takes some significant communication skills that people don't understand either.
it's,
Like, that should be a requirement for any leadership role. Like, hard requirement is the ability to communicate with another human.
right, Ghost? You got some thoughts there from the last couple days in the 79 Discord in their world chat.
Things have been quite spectacular.
You gotta have
Oh, Lord.
Anyway, I need to run as well because I'm going out spontaneously here. So see you later.
Later, Ghost. Later.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's spot on with the having some level of having some level of expectation, that, like, and that's one of the things, like, one of the things I usually do with are, like, people who want to be in diplomacy. So, like, if people want to do recruiting or if they want
Oh,
to do
God.
diplomacy, one of the things one of the things I'll do with them, and this is something you might actually appreciate and like, is on this level of creativity, I'll have them shadow me. So if I go in and I do something, I'll create a group chat, and then I'll just say, like, look, I just want you to just watch what I say, right? Pay attention to my tone.
Hmm.
Look at the flow of the conversation, and I'll have them shadow me, or I'll take screenshots from previous conversations that I thought showed different sides. Like, okay,
Yep.
was the conversation effortless? Like, this person just already wanted to come into the kingdom. Was this person on the fence? How did I address that? Were they cautious? How did I address that? But I was still able to convert them. Showing different approaches to how you can have a conversation depending on what you may experience in the most likely events, I think is extremely important to show that off. Because, and even on the diplomacy side, when you're conducting diplomacy, the way you conversate, the way you the words you use, the tone you take,
Are critical.
writing out full sentences, right? This
Yeah.
isn't like, 13 teenage girls who are, like, leak texting in acronymed shorthand, like, like they're speaking Ebonics, right? That's not how you have a conversation with someone.
Yep.
And And so doing those things. And so one of the other things I did is when we had groups that wanted to come and migrate, I would tell officers and leads and I'd ask them, hey, I have a meeting today with this group. Would you like to come and sit in? If you do, let me know. I'll shoot you a link. And I said, look, right, it's just to observe, right? Again, I'll be doing the talking, but if you are someone who's interested in eventually wanting to do this, do what I do, right? Like, dude, I'll take you all the way with me. If you're really sincere and you really want to contribute, right? These are the steps that really need to happen. Why? Because there is no way in this earth that you or I can expect that you're going to handle the situation appropriately as I would.
Right.
And there has to be some baseline, right? And you might already be great at holding a conversation. Like, you might already be able to do what I do. But I still want to go through at least some steps so that way there can be consistency and some kind of guideline that is established. So that way I at least have the know, right? Or the guarantee of knowing that you at least saw what I did, right? There's at least some, I don't know if I'd say proof of concept, but some back end confirmation, like a backup for me that says, okay, well, they at least saw what I did. They saw these screenshots. They listened in, right? Now I can go and see how they would handle, right? And then usually, and this is something I never did, but now that I'm talking about this, I'm actually thinking of probably what I should have done is set up group chats or ask people like, hey, if you have a group that's coming in, make a group chat just so I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And have that ability to potentially do like post meeting, like a debrief or maybe some coaching if there's something that's needed. But now that kind of gets in, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but just that, I think doing those things are so important that almost every kingdom, like, and I'll say this again, 99.99 repeating of kingdoms do not do this. And I'm talking across any game. Like, they don't go to that level of treating it like, hey, I am like, and for me, right, in my situation, I'm excited to show you what I do. Why am I excited to show you what I do? Because I can do less. That's why.
Right.
And I can focus my attention elsewhere and feel that I can trust these people to now take over, right? Kind of after those training wheels are off. I think there has to be some period that happens for that. It's just the problem is that those things rarely happen.
See, you're so much nicer than me. So I like the idea of shadowing. I have not gone to that extent of them actually shadowing in the sense that you're talking about it. Obviously, I don't let people fall on their face. Like, yeah. I teach them. But that being said, like, once you have the information, it's on you to actually raise your hand if you have questions about it. And then you're free to make your own mistakes. Like, it goes back to emotional intelligence and learning your lesson. Now, obviously, or lessons learned, not learning your lesson. That sounded way worse. But obviously, if there's a sensitive situation that is larger than like a one-on-one scenario or just communication between two people, then people need to step in and, guide. But I don't know realistically if someone shadowed me, if they would ever want to do anything near what I do, because after they see it, they're going to run away.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think with diplomacy, like, there's just so many layers to diplomacy, internal diplomacy, external diplomacy. I have never walked away from a diplomacy role and thought, man, that was so much fun, like, ever. Just because it's a constant work. And I think that that's a huge thing that people don't realize whenever you're setting up a kingdom, setting up a server, and how much goes into it. Because, I mean, each time you talk in like IK General, you're representing your server. Each time you talk in World Chat, you're representing your server, that kind of stuff. And you have to be really careful of what you say. And there are definitely people who are born leaders. You can tell they have the fire in them. They are going to be freaking awesome. But God, they cannot control their emotions. And then they say things irrationally because they're angry or whatever that may be. And it's just, it's a beating. It's a real beating.
It is. It is. I feel like this is just a fantastic venting conversation while being educational at the same time.
I do think there needs to be more content, something somewhere, whether
Yeah.
it's videos, whether it's some sort of guide of some kind that does set up at least a framework, even at a high level, because there's no way you could really cover everything, I think, but at a high level of here's all the things that go into, an alliance leader, a server leader, a kingdom leader type role, and understanding what at least those groups are, or forming it in a way that allows a incoming member who maybe doesn't have the experience as the other people who are C50 still can understand it or grasp it. You know what I mean? Because that helps them understand, like, do they want to go that route? Because if you want to go that route, I mean, that's something you can start working on immediately, right? You just got to take the right steps and know what direction to go and who to communicate with and what to do. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Sorry. I was reading something, so I lost like the last 10 or 15 seconds you said there about what to do. What was the TLDR there?
Rip. There needs to be content over at just a high level,
Yeah.
the minimum of what each of these different roles and pieces mean. Because, like, to have a healthy server, you have to have server leaders, you have to have kingdom leaders, you have to have alliance leaders, you have to have members, you have to have management in between all of these things. You have to have communication forums, right? It can't just stay in game. You won't be successful if you don't have a way to communicate outside of the game. I mean, I don't care who you are. There's no way. Based on all of my vast experience, that is never going to work. So, I mean, it's just knowing that kind of stuff and making sure that you set it up the right way the first time will save you so much work and headache in the future. And I think that it should be content that's at a level that anybody can understand, not just these senior players.
No, for sure. So, God, I mean, don't get me, man. You just opened up a whole can of worms to me. I could write a novel on
I bet
on this, like literally, if there, let me give you, so I don't know if you have kids or not, but there's this pregnancy book that's like the pregnancy book, right? And they just update it, they make more versions of it, but it is basically known, and I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's like the Holy Grail pregnancy book that they update all the time, and it's basically just bought. And you could make the argument that if you are of the belief where you want to get some information on, just general things, good tips on what it kind of, on what maybe goes into raising a kid, right? Even though, as some people will tell you, right, there's no manual for raising a human being. Again, there's still good information. I've actually read it myself, but there is a book on that. If there was ever a book to be written on how to manage a kingdom, I would write that book, and it would be at probably like 2,000 pages effortlessly. I could go on for days, but what I will say to your point, or the topic you brought up, is I think it's 100% spot on. But I think it's so much more deep rooted than most of us think. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about how no content creators, for the most part outside of myself, if not all content creators outside of myself that are in this genre, do not touch on or cover like just kingdom management, development, everything that goes into player trends, psychology, just all the plethora of areas that we could touch on that have nothing to do with progressing your account or what events are coming up next or what new content's coming up next, is that because they don't talk about it, and because the game developers themselves do not talk about it, it's the problem is it's almost like a systemic failure, right? Because it's out of sight, out of mind, and it makes you wonder if the developers of these games, one, it makes me wonder if they play, but more specifically, if they play to where they truly have a complete understanding of what goes in. And I'm talking more than just a player, because playing as just a player is only going to give you an understanding up to a certain point. You will never know
Yep.
what is more than the average daily life of a player until you become an officer, a leader, until you do department work, until you do task work that is kingdom wide, not just alliance wide, right? And so
Absolutely.
and so that's the thing that I wonder about is how many developers really understand these things because they've done them. And the conclusion I've come to, and this is just me being extremely conservative, is I just believe that they don't know. And that's not necessarily to me it's not necessarily like me giving a slight to them, but the fact is that this is your game. You should know, or at least be open to the idea that your game can evolve beyond what you thought it once was, or what you thought it was on its initial concept or release. Like, there are layers that can develop within your game or within an instance, a circumstance that can create a whole new level of understanding. And I feel as though part of it is that they just don't know what they don't know. And because of that, and because of and then when we compare those consistent trends of that no content creators outside of myself cover these things or talk about these things, that's what leads me to believe that it is systemic, right? It's deep rooted in that they just don't know, and that causes and because those things have happened, it has caused this complete, what I feel is just a general letdown. Because the thing is that if you want to improve player activity, if you want to improve, and let me just start here. The most important thing when a player downloads your game is how long are you going to retain that individual on your game?
For sure.
And if they are not made aware, or they don't have any expectations on what their daily life is, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying before on like the daily player life, their experience is directly connected to how long they're going to play the game, if they keep playing it, if they uninstall it, if they go to another kingdom, if they migrate, or if they re-roll and make a new account. Their player experience is directly related to what their choice will be before they care about what content is in the game. And so that, to me, I think is just, I just think it's a systemic problem that causes, that actually could directly could directly factor into any kingdom builder having such a higher player base than they currently have right now, is what I truly believe.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I mean, when you talk about the devs, that's definitely a real thing. And it's not just in mobile games. Like, I know a lot of devs, and like my dad is a dev. He lacks that gap or that bridge between the code and the function and the actual operational use of it. So in talking about the game, it's understanding, yes, this button, when I click it, it does this as intended, super. But what does that mean for the user? That's where the player, that's where that gap is. And typically really successful teams that are developing content like this and all those things, they have that that bridge position there to help communicate it effectively to the devs. And I do think that that's something that IK has, and I'm sure other games, but this is IK, so whatever, has a huge area of opportunity in, is being able to understand, yes, they made this function, but how does that impact our lives and the quality of life, and the work that's involved, and other impacts of the game that it also touches on. So, I mean, and like, for example, they raised the core relics, right? The strength of it right as soon as the update comes out. They think, okay, on paper, this makes sense. That was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. And it's for reasons that are not related to the functionality of it. Mm-hmm. It's just, they legitimately don't know. Yeah. Which is why that meeting with the devs, I thought, was a really good move, even if it took a petition to get it, but whatever. You have the meeting with the devs. I think that the idea behind it was solid. I think that they answered relatively appropriately, considering, and now is what do they do with that, right? And I think it's this is a really, really critical moment for IK to take that information and decide, okay, do we have that bridge? If they do, then I think the bridge would be able to effectively help the devs create things better for the player base. If they don't, then I don't know that the devs have a chance.
Yeah, I'm. Yeah, I'm definitely kind of slowly getting on that train. But let me just say, I think everything you just said there was so beautifully and eloquently worded. Kind of, it's funny when you said user, I'm like, oh, cool. We're just gonna start making Tron references now. I'm totally down. Let's just speak in that code. But yeah, no, I think the example you gave with your dad as a dev, from the action to the use of that action, God, that just, I mean, I might start using that. I mean, that's such a great way of wording it, so that it can be understood. Because yeah, you might have made this fantastic product, but people can use a product in a lot of different ways, right? People might just not, like, I think a good example, whoever created butter. Well, maybe the intended use for butter might have just been, well, I'm just going to put butter on my bread after it's toasted, right? But other people put butter on other things. Some people put butter in their pan, or they'll put butter on their steak while it's while it's cooking in the pan. I mean, there are so many different uses for a product that can make that product so much more valuable and beneficial to in a multitude of ways to the same population. It doesn't mean that it's only going to be used in one way or two ways. And I think that is something that, as you said, is kind of where they're at. They have these tools, these things that they've put in the game, these events, but it doesn't mean, like, a good example. Man, here's the best example. And this is something I said in the dev meeting video, is that they came out, like, someone asked about COR nodes, right? No, like being able to count, track who has, like, capture times and capture amounts. And one of the responses from the devs was that, and this is one of the things you might have heard me hit on, because I actually made a standout point of this, is I said they gave us insight into what their thinking was on the action of the feature. And what the response was is that, well, they didn't anticipate for it to be used. In short, that was the short version, is that they didn't anticipate, or sorry, they anticipated for it to be used this way, and not the way that we were giving feedback on. And it just hammers that point home even more, is that, well, that's okay, but this is something that we, like, they basically said, like, well, these nodes were meant to be fought over. Well, okay, like, sure, that might have been your intended use for it, but that's not how you min-max and develop a kingdom, right?
Right.
And so, and that goes, it just full circle back to what you said about just, again, playing the game to have an understanding of these things, to understand why people do it this way. Like, I mean, even, and I don't know how many of them speak English, but even if you just watch my videos on me talking about these things, which I've covered a few times, on just kingdom management in general and all the parts that go into it, right, you'll understand why. Like, even if you wonder why is he the only guy or person that covers this, if you just listen to what I'm saying, you'll understand. You will at least at minimum understand the logic and the rationale for why we talk about it this way. And then on top of that, why do other kingdoms do it as well, right?
Yep.
Like, there's many kingdoms that use systems and templates and foundations that I have talked about in my videos as their standard core for how they develop their kingdom in certain ways, or in some ways. And you know what? Those kingdoms are probably better off because they're doing those things earlier, rather than if they didn't and they just left it up to Battle Royale Hunger Games chance.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's true. When you're min-maxing, if you want to grow fast, you make sure that you have your core rotation and all of that stuff. That's a really good example, and really good example, honestly, of that gap. And that is really clear there.
I love myself.
Boss.
Yeah, what's up?
So when I used to play World of Tanks, we had people that would be like deputies, people who had a job to do, like recruiting or training. Right? What people don't understand is the hours it takes to run something. Like, you have to be, you can't, too much of a load on yourself. Like, if you have kids and then you take on so much in the game to do and you have a job, people get overwhelmed and they just, either stop doing it or quit because it's too much for them to do it. So, like, for example, while we wait to jump, if you have like a course, people could take like the lead officers during the time they wait, to show them, what it would take to be a leader, what just examples of like diplomacy, stuff they had to do or show up, so many times during the week to see who shows up, just who's actually going to put in the effort to be an officer or a leader, because anybody can apply for it and you can give them, but who's actually going to stay the full time, and do the job. I've been in like several jumps where the first 2 to 4 weeks people leave, like leaders abandon because they put too much on themselves. Deputies will leave, and then they just restart the jump again and do the same thing again, restart, because they don't know, how much effort it takes. Like if you put 6 months into planning, you're not just going to quit 2 weeks into it.
Yeah, but does it take so much time as a commitment because of the game functionality and things that need to be made more efficient, or is it a situation that's outside of that? And I think that's where you kind of have to know the difference, because is it a dev thing or is it not a dev thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think with something like with officer education, that definitely is not a dev thing. I mean, I think anything that has, I mean, just in general speaking, right, that's something where it's almost as though someone has to kind of take that opportunity. It could be a dev thing, right? It's not like they can't. I mean, if you look at IK, they have the like Norheim survival guide. Like, I'd love for them to add something in there that just says like, hey, here's a tab on kingdom management. Like, let me write the book. I'll do it for you. Like, I mean, and I'll just talk about the general common denominator things. But for Rock, like Cerberus was mentioning, yeah, I see. I mean, and that happens in IK just to a lesser degree because Rock's been out longer and has just a more profound, just a larger base of jumpers consistently. But that's something I've done. Like, if you look at my recent videos, and that's what Bunny and I were talking about earlier in the conversation. And Ben Barrow, I haven't forgot about you. I'm totally gonna talk about the IK thing. But just for that alone, I've made already a few videos about Rock and kind of setting those expectations for different people in different roles. So if you want to be a lead, if you want to be an officer, here's a guide, right? Here's a full guide walkthrough. You want to be a contributing member. How can you be a good contributing member? Like, damn, like that to me, I thought was a great video when I thought of the idea. Like, how can you, as a person who's playing this game just as a non-officer, non-leader, right? What are things you should be aware of that you should be doing every day? Great idea, I thought. And actually, a lot of people liked the video, which I'm shocked, but also happy for. But then I've also went and like broke down what the roles are, right? Do you want to be a recruiter? Do you want to be a diplomat? Do you want to be an intelligence officer? Do you want to be in the War Department, right? Or a war rep? So I did all these guide videos on different roles. And yeah, I think I probably could do something like that for IK as well. And I plan to do more for Rock, because there's a lot of areas that aren't covered, a lot of things that aren't talked about, unless, at least at this point, someone from the community does it. But to your bigger point, yeah, I think those pieces of content can help out a lot with people deciding whether to re-roll, not re-roll, right? Are they getting in a good group? Like, I've even done videos on, hey, is it best to solo jump or join a group? I've done videos on how do you find groups, right? What are good practices on, like, one of the things I tell people is join multiple groups. Read all their announcements. Look at how the community is. Look at who the leaders are, who the officers are. Pay attention to what they post, what they type. Right? Cross-reference. Do your due diligence. Right? Because the first group you join may not be the best group. Right? But it also may not be the worst group. You just don't know, because if your sample size is 1, that's not really a sample size, right? You have to go out and look, and that's one of the things I tell anyone who joins my projects, right? Which is something I can guarantee you no other project tells their players to do, but it is something that I do, because I just think people should educate themselves. Like, you should be informed. You should want to be informed. But anyways, yeah. I don't want to get too far off topic. So
they should want to to get better. Willing to read or watch whatever is posted, because you can't. My grandfather always said you can't take a horse down to the river to drink. I mean, you can't force it to drink. You can take it, but it ain't gonna drink. It ain't thirsty. They have to willing to want to do it.
100%.
I will say, though, to extend on what you're talking about too, though, is there are game functions that do impact the leadership roles and management roles, all of those pieces. Like, I know I complain about this a lot, but core rewards directly come into mind when we're thinking about this.
Oh my God, revert the system, please. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever they were thinking was probably really great for the one little teeny tiny speck that they were thinking, but the overall impact to that is so dramatically painful and requires so much time, and it doesn't allow you to have at least the ability that you had before. And the amount of time it takes away is disgusting. It was a bad call, and I cannot believe we still have it. But that's an example of a dev-related game function that people don't understand the expectation of. And I teach everyone in our alliance how the core rewards work so that they understand how miserable it is, and they complain less. They still complain, but it's less.
Yeah. And less is more.
Because they have no idea.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah, no, 100%. Oh man, yes, too wild. But sorry, yeah, Barl, let me answer your question. I know I think you asked me in jump chat. Do recon. So the thing with recon is we did do recon. I know you're asking about KVK1. We did. Ghost actually set up a team. I know he's not here right now to say that, but it was done. So Ghost had reached out to a few people and ended up getting a group, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, that once the kingdoms were announced for KVK1 matchups, they went in there, pulled data, and we scraped that data and filtered it, and then we sent it to the management team. So everyone that was an officer at the time had access to the spreadsheet and could see the data that we pulled. And that data was used appropriately. We used that data, for example, when we were reaching out and doing diplomacy, which having that information on hand can let you know who are maybe allies that you want to reach out to first, maybe ones that you want to have more of a conversation with. It also allows for you to kind of choose maybe who you even get in touch with first if you're looking for, just depending on what you're looking to get out of KVK. Do you want like an even 4v4 matchup? Do you want a 3v5 because it's even? Do you want a 3v5 because there's just an advantage for you over the other group? So a lot of it depends on what your kingdom is looking to get out of KVK, but more so how you want to go in. But that data was used. The challenge is that there can be limited ways to use that type of data. Like, you can know that another player is stronger than you, right? But the best information you're really going to get out of that is what march are they running, what are their support skills that they're running in case you want to try and counter setup. But then you have to be able, and to be fair, we did that as well for our rapid response team, which was our like top 100 players off troop power that we had on the board. So we posted screenshots of other kingdoms, of the enemy kingdoms' top marches, along with who they were running and what their support skills were. So we actually
did the same.
Yeah, I mean, which to me is just standard, right? Like, so we did that information. Again, I'm not sure, because I believe you were an officer, so I'm not sure if maybe at the time you just didn't see the announcement, but it was posted in at least 2 to 3 places. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, but to answer the question then, yeah, that information was posted, and it was disseminated not only to management, but to any of the players of the top 100, which there was about, I don't even know, maybe 60 or 70 people in the top 100 that we had in our rapid response team, based on troop power. So, and they got that information as well. We pinged people, made it an announcement channel. So the information was disseminated what I felt was appropriate. But beyond...
I will say one thing we did differently, and this may just be because it's a different environment, is we actually made that information available to anyone who is in our SVS server. So we created a separate Discord server for SVS, and then this is where we posted all that recon information, and every member had read-only access to it, just to get an understanding of what it is we're looking at.
Yeah.
Unrelated, though, I will say that the most valuable thing that has come out of SVS, in my opinion, is the ability to kind of gauge activity. So, for example, I'm on S8, right? So I looked at, okay, how many members in S8 scored more than 500K Valor, because that includes the donated resources and whatever else. Yep. And then what was that at the test season? And then what was that at season 2? And that is the most real way I have ever seen NIK to actually be able to gauge effectively a server's activity.
Yeah, yeah. And more specifically, like who your active fighters and KVK contributors are going to be. But yeah, I think doing it that way is great. And actually, unfortunately, I didn't really have an opportunity to do that. Just because, which I will say it was on my bucket list, as many things were on my to-do list. But given how everything went there towards the end, there really wasn't a need, at least for me, to keep over contributing. But I love what you just said. I think that's 100% spot on. And
well, maybe that's something that your Council of the Kings can do. Is everybody in each of their brackets just owns it, and like for all of the brackets that S8's in, I already have the data because I want to track servers to see, okay, are they going down? Are they going up? You know, are they relatively being stable? And one thing that was really surprising for me, and I only looked at 500K Valor and up because that's kind of where my threshold was. That may be a number that needs to be adjusted, but that's just where I started. Given all the movement that we have had between the test season and server 2 and all of the DPS stuff and everything, the perspective on it is way more significant than it actually was. It's a 15-player difference from the test season to season 2, which was surprising to me because the perception of it is so much bigger. You know what I mean? So it was insightful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And don't get me wrong, like, you know, with all my accounts, I could do that, right? The problem is that is a lot of work, right? It's almost as much work as I did. Well, it may be.
That's what I'm saying.
It may be almost
to the Council of the Kings.
Oh yeah. No. I 100%. I actually think you're spot on there. Another use actually to ask them to pull data. For those that want or would like to pull data or be willing. Let me say that.
It's not even that hard, though. Yeah. Like, I legitimately was able to just go in there and click, and within probably 20 minutes had 16 servers worth of information.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like you have to write names down or anything. You just basically have to find the number.
No.
And then,
exactly.
If you need to count how many are in each kingdom. But, I mean, that might be the only thing that would just take a little bit of time. But, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. I need to... I have a little note docket here that I can write down.
I can send you what I have for S8 and what I was tracking so that you can at least see it.
Oh sure, no, that'd be great. I have like a notes channel here on my staff section on the Discord, so just like things I don't forget. I'm just gonna put this down. Ask about activity tracking and KVK from coins, or sorry, let's say dollar coins.
Legion marks or whatever. Yeah, and the reason that I actually initially started doing this was to understand, okay, yeah, it was in our KVK in season 2, we had S21 and S16 versus basically everyone else. But what did that really mean, right? It sounds good, super. You have 6 servers versus 2, but what does that actually mean? And that's initially why I pulled it, was to understand, okay, how many active players, like active players were in each of these servers that contributed to it. And because we do a lessons learned after every IB, after every SVS, all of that, so that we can take that information and obviously improve upon it. Yeah. But, and that's where we went. And then I was like, man, this would be a great way to see the trends too. So if you're scouting a potential server, for example, this is exactly what I would look at.
Shit, man. Bunny, talking to you has been a joy that I feel I would have never been able to get out of the last S8 regime, unfortunately. That just thought they had all the answers in the world. Actually, very similar to S79 when they had forced me out. Just again thinking, which is funny because actually the same thing happened in S79 that happened to 8, right? So in S8
Yep.
they voted me out, but now those people that were leading those alliances don't play there anymore. So that's an utter fail and a contradiction of your life. And then,
Well, it's a success on my part.
oh really? Oh, what do you mean success on your part?
I don't have to deal with them now.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. More like a benefit by default, right at that point,
Yes. Yeah.
or from action. But then you look at 79, and and the current council I had there, very similar to S8, right? They basically voted me out, and then now none of those players that were leading their alliances are leading them anymore. They've either quit, stopped playing, or are in a lesser role, but essentially is them out of leadership rotation. And then you look at right, so that's one trend, right? Which is that one you did like, and this is how I view it. You did all that work, right? You did all that work to vote someone out because you thought that your way of doing things was better, and that person didn't want to leave. And while they were there, those kingdoms were on an upward trend, right? There was nothing declining about it. It was the golden age while this person was there. But then they leave, you vote them out, and now you're declining, and then you leave the position? Like, dude, talk about an utter contradiction. Like, what a bunch of hypocrisy that is. And I'm surprised, to me, and I don't know, you might be able to tell me more, I'm surprised that no one called them out. Like, I never heard from anyone in S8 on calling them out because of what they did, but more specifically, waiting to see what happened so they could see if it was going to work or not, and then calling them out because of it. Because in 79, there are a few people who have called out the current council based on what things are happening, but not to the extent, not for the amount of people that knew me and I conversated with or knew what I was about, that I would have expected based on what the public data is and what we can see happening. And that's interesting. Those two common denominators that I see from S8 to S79 happening the exact same way, of it not going the way they thought, it going worse than what they actually had hoped for, and then they all quit and left anyways. Like, dude, like, just what a giant slap in the face to the player base is how I look at that. So,
Oh, absolutely. I think, and I don't know, to be fair, when you were there, I was not there. Coming in after the fact, the culture between alliances varied significantly. And it was the old regime that you were referencing. They were definitely primary drivers there and made the decisions. And it was a sense of they were making those decisions because nobody would stop them from making those decisions. And I think it had to do with because they had the power and people were scared. And I, fortunately and unfortunately, never know when to stop or not say something. So it was one of those things where it felt very much like it was me saying, hey, that's an asshole move. Don't do that, right? And nobody else is saying anything. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Then DMs. But when it comes to like actually publicly speaking out, it's a huge challenge. And I think that it's one of those slippery slopes that once you start down that path, if you don't nip it in the butt right away, that it becomes a monstrous problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I am 100% confident that if you were to follow these people to all the servers that they're jumping to, they're running into the same thing.
It's the definition of insanity without them knowing that it's actually happening.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that they just lack the ability to grasp the bigger picture and are focusing too much on their single alliance or their single individual play is really what I think it is. And maybe that goes back to being able to build a stronger leadership team with expectations at the beginning. Like if perhaps that was done differently, or if we were able to take the lessons we know now and apply it, then would it change anything? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say...
And then some people are just...
Yeah, no, for sure. I think with... And I'm sure Ghost could attest to this too as well, right? We we did. Um, I mean, almost everything you can think of, right? When it comes to getting the leads on board, right? Like my process when we're in the when we were in the jump phase was, people apply, they fill out the application, and then I interview them at least 1 to 2 times, and then I make sure that I effortlessly go over all the major things, like what the hierarchy is. This is the kicker for me, is that we did such a great job, in my opinion, of setting that foundation where these people that wanted to be the initial leaders, when they came on board, they signed off on it, like they wanted to be a part of this. And that to me is the next most giant slap in the face, is just the utter betrayal, really, because they chose to apply, they chose to do the interview, they chose to play, knowing full well, crystal clear, what the expectations are, how we were going to run things. And for 5 months, you don't say anything, not a peep, about your discontent, your discomfort, about anything, to any significant amount, right? Or even the majority of the leads. And then I come to find out that, just like what happened on S8 that I found out as well later, there's just these the backroom deals, backroom servers of all them, or of however many of them conversating, leads and officers, without me knowing. And then all of a sudden they come to me with their proposal / ultimatum. and then it comes full circle, and karma's a bee, as it usually is, where things didn't go how they thought it was going to go, and they basically end up leaving their positions because they failed ultimately. And what's funny is I didn't get no postcards like, where's my apology, where's my letter, where's the lack of pride, where's the self-awareness, right? Where's the accountability and the responsibility to owning your actions, that you truly did fail the server. You kicked someone out while you were on a high note. You lasted half the amount of time that they did, and you basically set the kingdom, for however long it was on a downward spiral. Like, you basically did everything wrong that you could have not done to not be in the position that you were in when you left. And that's the kicker. It's just like so many, what's the word? Like so many safety gates that had to almost be forced through to fail that hard.
Yeah. I think legitimately the at least for SA, it's one of those scenarios where they just don't see it.
Yeah. I agree.
And I also wonder too what the outcome would have been if I hadn't gone there, because fortunately I have a big account, so I have a lot more ability to back up what I'm saying versus somebody who could be saying the exact same thing but with an average account. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, there is that.
Yep. Level of influence.
Yeah. That just comes with the idea of power.
Exactly, the idea of it, for sure. I don't know. I really don't know how it would have turned out. I will say that according to the ones that left, their direct reason for leaving had to do with actions that I had implemented and things like that. But which I am in no way offended about. I'm glad that it happened. I think they would have killed the server. So now we're in this rebuilding phase, right? So we're taking all of these lessons learned. And even when you were there, we're taking lessons learned of how do we ensure that this doesn't happen again? You know, what did we learn from it? Where did we see these fail points? And how do we build on it? And one of the things is transparency. Like, all conversations happen in our council chat with the council members. Like, there's no DMs. And if it goes to DMs, it's one of those things where people are like, no, this should be in council. Like, everything is discussed openly. And that has helped so much to have everybody on the same page.
Yep. Yeah, no, it does. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I've done projects where council chat has been open, like from the beginning. And then I've done projects where council chat was not open from the beginning, but maybe opened at a later time. I've been in projects where officer chat and council chat is open, and then ones where they just don't open it. But they obviously do the best job they can to be as transparent as possible with frequent announcements to explain what's happening. But I agree. I think being able to read some of the challenge is just kind of twofold, right? It depends on how much you weigh, how much stock do you put in having an open council chat at minimum, right? If you potentially have any spies, right, in the kingdom that were able to get in and pass the verification, which for the most part actually isn't really hard to do. So sometimes what I find is that putting too much stock in that can kind of lead just to being too paranoid. I mean, at the end of the day, even if people are able to get past your whatever verification level you have there for what they need to submit or anything like that, they still have to be able to implement whatever you're implementing or take away whatever they would take away, right? Be able to find some kind of an advantage or opportunity to abuse or pinpoint in some capacity, and it doesn't always mean they will. So sometimes I view it as just don't really care, right? Like the upside for the health of the server probably far outweighs whatever some spy might be able to take away from your council conversations. So
yes and no. I think so. What I was specifically referring to is just the transparency within the R6 role, ensuring that the R6s are not communicating with each other in DMs, and that it all goes open in front of all the other R6s.
Oh, my bad.
Read only. I've been a part of.
You mean just having like a council chat on the Discord that's just for all of the leads to talk?
But them actually using it.
Oh, damn! Never mind. I thought you were going to the next level, which is like having council chat as read only to all the players in the kingdom.
I'm on the fence about the read-only council chat, honestly. So in S10, we had read-only, and it's because there was so much shady stuff that happened in there. Like, it was just everybody needed to understand what that current state was, and that was our solution for it. And the result was as intended, which is good. But it exposes member level players to things that they probably don't want to have anything to do with, or maybe they really just don't want to see or care about, or it brings into doubt certain things that they never would have even been exposed to if you hadn't done that before. Because think about, as an R6 in a council chat, like there's a lot of discussions about a lot of different things that probably shouldn't be exposed to the regular member because they don't care.
Yeah, and also I think another area, and this is I think one of the reasons why. I think it's one of the reasons why more often than not I usually take the side of not opening those chats, but just trying to be kind of as transparent as possible. Is also because the tone that people take, right? The expectation, right, kind of goes right back to just kind of code of conduct, right? Like just having good
emotional intelligence.
Yeah, having good decorum, right?
Yeah,
is something that not everyone may use or be able to apply in certain ways, and so sometimes it can even shed light on certain leaders, right? You might read a conversation, but you might read a conversation of your lead saying something in council chat that they don't necessarily portray that themselves that way in your alliance chat or when sending mails out, and that could change your perspective of them, and then that might make you want to leave the alliance and go join another one. Like, so there are unintended consequences that can happen from opening those up as well. But and that's why I say, like, if everyone is really on the same page and everyone votes feeling comfortable knowing what the expectations are, and they all agree, like, yeah, it's okay if we open up the chat, then okay, that's different. At least I should say different to an extent. But at that point, you probably want to make a fresh council chat before you before you do that. So it's just it is. It's one of those things where you're really you're basically putting all your skeletons out there, right, for so to speak, for the world to see. And and I agree with you. I think if things are going well and the kingdom's developing well, everyone's on the same page, more than likely there's not a need for it. I think that if you're in times of turmoil, kind of like you described, and I think part of maybe why 79 chose to do things the way they are is because one of the things you'll hear from some of the council members there in 79 is that people wonder what council does. Like they just don't have,
Yep.
there's a portion of them that just don't have faith or trust in council because they just think they don't do anything. So opening it
Yep.
up is a way to try and show that, hey, look, we are actively talking about things, we are trying to get things done. And I think based on their situation, how it is currently, I think opening up council chat is a good way, as you said before, when there's kind of moments of those crises, there can be more of a pro than it is a con.
Yeah, I think it depends on your server. It depends on your member base. It also, um, what's your intended goal by doing it, right? That matters. I think that there's a lot of factors involved in it to understand, is that beneficial or not. Like for just my alliance in general, I shield them from a lot of the BS because they don't care and they don't need it. They need to focus on the fun parts of the game, their role and in their box. And if they want to extend past that, they can see exactly what it takes to go to that next level because I make those expectations super clear. So they know, you know what, if I want to move up, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z, one, two, three. I want to do that. I'm going to go do that. And then we absolutely hold everybody accountable, good and bad, to everything. So if you see a member stepping up, they get the recognition. If you see a member who maybe falls outside of those requirements, then it's black and white for us. And I do that because, well, two reasons really. One is very selfish, but it's because the amount of work involved in damage control, if you don't nip it in the butt right away, but also too, you want members to have faith in the process, right? In that path. So if you have a member who's a really good friend of yours and, you know, they really want to be in R5, but they're not doing shit, then that's not going to be something that's beneficial to everybody else, kind of deal. So it's in our environment, that works really, really well. In other environments, I can see that that would not be as successful.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty spot on for sure. It is. Yeah, it's rough when you are
Like I even have a. So in our Discord, we have a channel of like a who we are, and in there, it's completely transparent as to like that document that I posted in the IK chat. That's in there. Like basic things, standard things, like here's what your name format needs to be, like really giving them all of the information in addition to here's what every officer is responsible for specifically, and here's who you go to for all of these millions of things, even when it's not an officer. So for like March help, who your resources are for, diplomacy, for recruiting, for you know, your war chiefs, your IB leads, your recon people, all of that stuff. It's all clearly spelled out right there, in addition to each of the R1, R2, R3, and what it takes to get in each of those roles. But also what the hierarchy is of the server. So you, with the server leads, what the council does, what they vote on, what's within that scope, what's without that scope, when do things get published, and the expectations. And it very clearly says, you know, like if you don't meet 1, 2, 3, XYZ, you will be either demoted, and it lays out the path of what the repercussions are for that type of thing. That's actually saved me a lot of drama, I guess, and really just a lot of headaches, honestly, by laying it out right there in the open for everybody to see.
Yep, I am a big fan of, you know, here's your responsibilities, here's your tasks, and you know, here's
everyone else's.
Yeah, and here's the I like so like one thing we did was we came out with and I'm gonna answer your thing too, Ben. So I haven't forgotten. One of the things we did a little bit later on, which Ghost had set up for us that we talked about, and also amongst the councils, we set up a task board, right? So we had like a task board channel that talks about, you know, here's basically all the kind of kingdom wide management things that need to get done. And in that is a description of, you know, this is why we're putting this out there so people can have an expectation of how much work goes in. And then here's, if you want to sign up, here's that process, right? You contact these people, they let this person know, and then here's what the tasks are, and here's a brief description on the task, and then we tell them, if you're interested, you can DM me or Ghost, and we'll explain to you, what exactly we're looking for, what can be done. Because I think having a global board, even if you have one for your alliance or for certain departments, can at least show visually, look, there's stuff that needs to get done. And obviously there's, of course, room for people to help out. But it at least shows people what goes into it, what the actual kind of workload is, how many people are helping out, because we do also attach the Discord name for the person that is helping out, right? And they can see how long it's been up. So, I think regardless of however many people may sign up, it at least shows people what goes into it, and then it gives them an idea of, how many tasks are really just falling on a few people. That it more often than not does. So, and I thought that was a really good one. Like, we had a few people, one great thing we had is one of our leads, Embla, at the time, stepped up to want to manage our gift code channel. Right, so we have a dedicated gift code channel, and that person is in charge of keeping up to date on all gift codes. So you scour the game, you scour online, and anytime you find a new gift code that you test and is good, you update the gift code channel, and then you can ping everyone, right? And we give that person permission to do that. Like, that to me is a great task. Like, that is a great position to have on updating the gift code channel, right? Who doesn't want free rewards? And then also, when you have someone who's consistently updating it, there's a lot more engagement that can come from it, because it's now not being an update every month or so, right? Because some people will notice, like, hey, are there gift codes here or not? And the quality, the credibility of the channel increases, because if you're always staying up to date on gift codes and people start looking at it more and more often, and they punch them in and they actually work right within that period of time that they do it, hopefully sooner than later, then it lends credibility to the channel, where more people will start tuning into it more often, right? Instead of maybe trying to go and find them out on their own. So that's just one example of, I think, a great task that every kingdom can do, because it takes time to go and look for codes, or to whether you're doing it in-game or online, and then you got to test the code to make sure it works. Then you got to edit the channel, format it, or just update the formatting. So it's not that it takes a lot of time, but at least a little amount of time, enough to where you can say, hey, one person can totally handle this task by themselves, because in the grand scheme of things, it's a very little amount of time, but it's a decent amount of time when you're actually doing it to get all the updates.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, sorry, Ben.
I completely agree.
What did you say here, Ben? You said, I'm curious, do you feel like you and Ghost were taking on too many roles and not utilizing the leadership team enough? Because before KVK started, Riku did link you a diplomat that reached out to 79, and they were hoping to speak to you in diplomacy, but the end result is that we did not ally with them, which gave us a harder fight. Was there something that did not go well in the background, or could you not come to a conclusion with him in time? So this was announced to everyone in management at the time. I know there's two parts here. Let me focus on the first. So Riku did provide me with a contact, I believe, and the person that I spoke to, what was said in short, and this was mentioned to everyone as well, a part of management at the time, was that it was just too early, because we didn't know what the actual matchups were going to be. Now, the contact was still there, right? We still chatted and had a good conversation, and everyone that I chatted with before KVK1, everyone agreed. They're like, yeah, we don't know what the actual matchups are going to be, but you know what? Now we at least have a point of contact, so once we do find the matchups, if they are inclusive of our kingdoms, then we can reach out right away. So the relationship, right, the rapport was established there, to being able to go back and have that conversation at the appropriate time. We were going off the patch notes, because the patch notes came out and said that they may do some manual tinkering with some of those KVK1 groups. It just turns out that only like 2 of the groups they did like some manual readjustments for, by like 1 or 2 kingdoms. It wasn't a lot. But the assumption was that it could have happened. So we didn't want to form early allies with people that could potentially cut us off, depending if any of our kingdoms were swapped, right? So that was the stance we took, going off the information that we had. Other kingdoms just went ahead making allies and probably just didn't even think about it. They just probably thought that every group was going to be 8 groups, or the 8 kingdoms, right, 1 through 8 and so on, 9 through 16, etc. And it was just going to be like that. We paid attention to the notes and the details. I don't think everyone read those, right? I think a safe assumption could be made that not everyone read those. So because it was more of a finer print thing, it wasn't something that just stood out.
Well, and they had multiple iterations of that information too. I mean, we were in the same boat because it was not super transparent about what was going to happen. They just said it was a bigger pool. So
yeah,
what does that mean? Does that mean a bigger pool within the same section? Does that mean, they're going to take the additional next 8? Like it was very difficult to plan ahead of time, and we did not do alliances ahead of time because of that.
Yeah. And we took the same stance, but like I said, we had the contacts and the people that had reached out, and we said, yeah, look, the moment the groups are announced, we can definitely talk about being allies and see how that goes. What ended up happening was that I think there was 2 reps I spoke to early on. They just basically went to go and form allies already prior to groups being announced, and some of them did that, which we later found out may not have actually changed anything, because what we later found out was that the number 2, 3, 4, and 5 strongest kingdoms in our group, we found out that they all banded together against us, like on purpose, right? And so. And what's funny is that everyone in these groups knew, because I put a video out about it, saying that, look, we just want a fair fight. We want it to be 4v4, even Steven, and we want to go at each other on equal grounds, right? And everyone knows that if I'm leading a kingdom, that's always my approach, right? I'm not about having 7v1s or 6v2s or 5v3s or whatever it may be. Like I want it to be an even fight, because that's how you're going to get the most engagement. Right, if people know that if each side knows they have a chance to win, that's how you're going to have the most activity and the most engaged KVK, in my opinion. And so,
well, that's how you improve too, because you have the challenge. It's equal, right?
Yeah, agreed. I totally another element to it. And so, what ended up happening is that they just all, like I said, 2, 3, 4, and 5, just already allied, but they allied for a common goal, a common reason that either all of them or the majority of those kingdoms felt, which was that we want to go up against, however they felt about 79, but they allied for that reason. So at that point, we were and that's what I found out. And this was what I also explained to council. I'm not sure if this was explained to officers, but I know at minimum the leads, is that once I found that information out, then we let them know. And at that point, it was either, okay, we're either just going to work by ourselves against the 4 kingdoms, or we reach out to 6, 7, and 8 ranked kingdoms in the group and try to do something with them, which I did, right? So that was one of the things. After groups were announced, I immediately reached out to every kingdom and asked about forming allies. I eventually got this information. Now, 1 or 2 of the allies that were within the other union group that formed because of 79 actually were open to doing some things, but I already had the information and the intelligence that I found out that they had allied against us for that reason. So I'm like, okay, now they're just trying to double dip. That to me didn't really feel like the type of people I would want to get into a deal with. Like that could cause more problems than good ones potentially, when you're kind of playing both sides like that. And I'm not necessarily the type to expose that unless it's really blatant. Then that's different. And so we opted at that time I opted at that time to because the information, it was already set in stone, right? It wasn't really going to change. So I then immediately reached out to 6, 7, and 8, me and Ghost, and then Embla ended up setting up the Discord server for the KVK Discord server for all the officers and leads from these alliances that we verified. We had a verification channel so they would prove to us that they are who they are, or have the position in the alliance that they do. Had the Discord server, we set it up. We had like 4 or 5 scheduled voice meetings. We had individual channels for each of the kingdoms to provide updates on their status reports. We had a unified channel. We had all this stuff. that we gathered, and we made the best of the situation. I mean, that was really where we were at. There really was never going to be another outcome at that point, unless we decided to form allies earlier, when there was no guarantee that those kingdoms were going to be in our group in the first place, right? I like to try and go off of certainties, not uncertainties, right? Forming allies in that situation was the low percentage play, not the high percentage play. Regardless of the outcome, which, if you look at the outcome was actually still great. It was better than we expected, because we were still able to make it to Zone 2. We were still able to make it to Zone 3. And to kick it all off, their union fell apart, and then we were offered to capture Gnome Capital. Right? Because we had helped them capture the side capitals, and I had a good relationship with the other kingdoms already. So we were offered to capture Gnome Capital and take one of the Gnome cities, right? I just felt at the time, given how everything went, that we had already kind of met our goals there towards the end on the comeback by being able to capture more cities at the end and get more rewards, get those end rewards for more players. And it was a good initial learning experience where I just said, you know what, look, I appreciate you offering us the Gnome Capital. That is very gracious. You guys are more than happy to take it. And that does two things. Yes, we may not have got we may not have got the visual win, but what did we gain from that? We gained a good relationship with another kingdom that we may have seen in a future KVK. Thinking about long-term investment is just as important as thinking about what is in the now, right? You got a Bobby Fischer and Magnus Carlsen this piece, right? You can't just think 1 or 2 moves ahead. You got to think 20, 50, 60 moves ahead. And I think that kind of goes into what Bunny was saying as well, is that sometimes players can just tunnel vision. Like, they're only thinking about what is right now. What is happening currently? What do I have to get out of this immediate situation, and not thinking about how that actually sets us up for the future? Because if you look at how we performed in KVK1, it was not a loss by any means, right? Sure, we didn't capture Gnome Capital, but we were able to advance and play out KVK all the way to the end. And we were arguably a part of the winning side, because we were one of the kingdoms that made it into Zone 3, had at least one city, and were not overtaken, right? We were able to get all of our cities back as well in Zone 4, like a week before I think everything ended, if not a little bit longer. So, you know, visually on the map, when you look at all the cities that were taken, yeah, it may not necessarily look as though we were able to conquer a lot. But if you look at what we were able to do from day one up until the end, and what we were offered, which we did explain to everyone in multiple King's mails as well, and I think 1 or 2 Discord announcements, I still think it was a net positive, regardless if you want to classify it as a win or loss. I think it was a net positive for what we took away from it at the end, and we actually had really good participation throughout. So, you know, and even if you think about it in the beginning, I mean, we were 2v1ing 2 kingdoms, where we were pushing them back for those first 6 or so odd hours after gates opened. And the only reason why that was halted was because we got flanked by a 3rd kingdom from the back, and we had to fight a 3v1. Like, that was the only reason. If it wasn't for that, we would have kept pushing west and northwest and then north into that second supporting kingdom's territory. I have no doubt in my mind about that. And other people had acknowledged that as well. So I think there's a lot of people I think a lot of people misunderstand and at times misinterpret and have these false sense of expectations, when, remember, we never said and that's the thing to keep in mind, right? If you look at what we said in our kingdom announcements, we never said that we're going to win KVK. We never said that let me rephrase. We never said our only goal is to win KVK. Like, it's win or bust, right? It's championship or bust. We never said that to people. And I should say more specifically, I never said that to people. What we did say, however, was that we are KVK focused, and KVK is very important to this kingdom, and we want to build a successful kingdom that can be successful in KVK. That doesn't mean that equates out to automatic wins and we're just going to capture everything, right? You can have different forms and layers of success, even if you don't take the very last building in the very last zone, right? Like that's not the only thing that defines success. I could make the argument that having as many cities as possible in zone 1 and zone 2 and getting those constant 3 to 4 hour cycle rewards is a lot better than having gnome capital at the end. I think that's a very arguable point. And if you notice, going from KVK1 to KVK2, some of the things that Heretic pointed out were exactly that. So I don't know if you paid attention to these announcements, but Heretic's perspective shifted to we need to try and advance and get here to now we just need to try and capture as many cities as we can and focus on getting as many players rewards as they can. Why did his perspective shift? Something that a lot of people don't know. Why? Because I educated him on that. That's why. That's because me and Ghost had conversations with Heretic to talk about what was really important. His dynamic and his approach shifted because he was educated. He got more information and came to a understanding of, you know what, this makes a lot of sense. And those were things we always did, I thought, the best job that we could in explaining this to the people. But again, sometimes when players hear, hey, this kingdom is KVK focused, man, they just take the easy route and say, oh, well, that just means they're going to win all the time. And that's not what it means. That's how you set yourself up for mental failure. Or just unrealistic expectations.
Honestly, to expand on what you're saying too with KVK, the reputation on how you perform there, and not just your points, but how you interact, is significantly impactful down the road. And I'll take the extreme example of our KVK. Many people were watching it, right? S16 ultimately was the one who captured the capital. So on paper, they won. Well, they won. But I will say that because of the actions that they took, there are many servers who have reached out to me and said, if we are ever against them, they played dirty, blah, 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 whatever, based on their perception of it. But their perception is their reality, right? Yeah. So it's going to set that server up for a much more difficult KVK next time if they're faced with any of those larger servers that have said that. You know what I mean? So your performance and how you conduct yourself is significant. Who you make allies with, who you follow through with those on, and also even your interactions in chat too. Like that's impactful to your reputation in regards to KVK also. And those are just things that people don't typically think about, but are so significant.
Because because they think that because they think game isn't real life. They're like, oh well, why are we so emotionally invested? Why do we care so much about who betrays or who doesn't? Like those are things I often hear. I think there's even some people in the current 79 leadership that make comments like that, where they'll say it's just a game, we don't need to be that invested. But at the end of the day, the only thing any of us have to rely on is our word. Like your word is gold. At the end of the day, what you say, what your actions are, regardless if you want to view it or not like that, that's how it actually is, and that's just in general when it comes to KVK and doing diplomacy. Like, dude, we treat this like it's basically the United Nations, right? And it really is that. It might not be that intense, but that is how we treat it. Like, people care about who they ally with. They care about reaching out for, diplomatic relations. That's why organized servers approach the way that they conduct themselves in situations in a more professional way than unorganized or disorganized servers do. There is consistent method to that madness for sure. I think when you say, oh sorry Ben, then the first part, and I'll have to jump off here in a sec, but the first part of what you said there about do we feel like Ghost and I were taking on too many roles? There's two parts there. The first one, taking on too many roles, 100% yes. But you're never going to hear me complain. Why? Because things have to get done. And if you're not willing to do them yourself, why would I expect anyone else to step up and do it? So first and foremost, I think that is gold. You always have to be willing to do everything yourself, right? And that's because you have to have a minimum standard of expectation. Now, if anyone wants to exceed your minimum standard of expectation and surprise you with contributing or helping out, fantastic, right? That just will help lighten your load. But first and foremost, you have to understand that you need to be able to pretty much do everything, which is pretty much where Ghost and I were. Like, we were able to do everything that needed to be done. It's just, again, you have some things that are going to be more priorities than they are versus others, right? Because if you only have a limited amount of people that can help, right, you have a limited amount of expectation. Then when it comes to the second part of what you said about not utilizing leadership team enough, when you're asking, did we feel like we didn't utilize leadership team enough? No, I'd say I would say utilizing anyone is purely dependent on their willingness to contribute, right? So if they don't want to help out, okay, they don't want to help out. If they do want to help out, cool, right? We don't force anyone or require people to help out, but we do provide, and that was always my belief, right? I believed in providing friendly reminders. That's why we did something like have our task board. That's why we sent out announcements every once in a when we sent announcements out, we included parts in those announcements every other announcement or so, every second or third announcement, where we'd say, hey, there are some things that can be done. And if people want to help out, here's a list of a few things. If you want to assist, you can contact this person or that person. But we never wanted it to feel like it was like they're being forced, right? We wanted it to be something just like how I do, right? I like doing the tasks. Sure, are they monotonous? Sure, do they take some time? Sure, do I enjoy doing some more than others? Of course. But they have to get done. And I like the fact that when I get something done, it's going to help the kingdom out, right? It's kind of like, it's like what's that penny analogy, right? It's like, you're collecting pennies, like you pick up, or the coins analogy, right? It's like you collect coins throughout your year, and at the end of the year, you have like a couple grand, right? Or $1,000, however much it is, right? And I think that's very similar to what it is when you're looking for help. The fact of the matter really is that nobody really wanted to help when it came to kingdom-wide tasks. The majority of the tasks fell on Ghost and myself, even though some did help. It was more of they'd help for one thing. They do one thing, which is always appreciated. That's not to water that down. Or if there's tasks they sign up for that require a period of time to help out in, they would only do it for a little bit of time and then stop, right? So it's really more about looking at the player base and just the fact that not a lot of people wanted to assist, and that also includes for leaders and officers, right? There just weren't a lot of people that wanted to step up outside of isolated or a few situations, where some did, which was great. But the reality is that I explained this to people, and whether it's in a town hall, if it's in a video, if it's in an announcement, again, you can't force people to step up, right? They have to want to.
So I have a couple questions just so that I can understand y'all's KVK. So the leadership team for your KVK, is that the same leadership team for the server?
Yeah.
Okay. And then for the... Shoot, I lost the second question. I will say one of the things that I am absolutely 100% guilty of is I take on too much stuff without giving it to other people when I should, just because I know that I can do it right. Yeah. So I do it. But that can hinder the process too, right? Because if I'm doing 10 things okay versus I could do 3 things really well kind of deal. And I don't have any idea if that's y'all's scenario, but it might be a factor if you're doing too much stuff, but you're the judge of that, not me. But that might be a perception that happens. Whether it's true or not is something that you guys, I guess, would have to reset. And then for the communication, is the expectation that, within the leadership team, you guys make decisions, communicate, and then the leaders then go back to their alliances and communicate it?
As far as so communication structure pretty much was, again, our situation different, just because when we came in, a lot of our things were already discussed, right? So we don't really have to,
Gotcha.
we don't really have to kind of go through the process of a suggestion, a discussion, a filter, options, or suggestions, right? And then
you're all kind of already on the same page.
At a vote, exactly. So what we did is we just tackled these things well before. So we already decided how we're going to do COR, how we're going to do kill event, how we're going to manage King of the Hill, everything, right? Pretty much all the major things that you could consider. were already hashed out in the project phase. That's one of the reasons why in my jump ad, which is different, which again in IK you could make the argument I'm basically pioneering jumping just because it's not that big there coming from IK being new, is in my jump ad, and even in, we had a dedicated channel that said, hey, here's our goals, here's how we're going to do things, so everyone could read it. It was public. We even pinged it a couple times. People that joined saw that in the jump ad, so there's multiple points of reference that they can read on for how we plan to structure things out. And what it basically allows is that people can read those things up front and decide for themselves if they want to join or not, right? Knowing what those expectations are going to be when you get into the kingdom. So the foundation was pretty much already set, which reduced the amount of conversation that we needed to have on things like decisions. On top of that, it was already deemed, right? Like I already told everyone through going through the leader and officer vetting applications and interviews when needed, was that, this is our hierarchy system, right? So it's me at the top, reserving the right to make final decisions if and when necessary. And then we'll always start off our conversations at the council level or the officer level and work its way up. And that's where we'll have discussions, conversations, suggestions, and feedback, right? And it was pretty simple how I approached it. Now, I will say there was never a time where I actually used that quote-unquote veto power, if you will. Most of the time, because things were already discussed, it was me just announcing those, right? These are things we've already talked about. We don't need to sit here and rehash it. That's the whole point. It's to limit that. And then for other things that came up, we would always have a discussion there. We talk about it. Maybe we get in voice. Maybe we make a thread channel so we can have a hyper-concentrated conversation on a certain topic. And for the most part, pretty much everyone joined in. Pretty much everyone contributed in discussions. And we showed that as well when I had my big, January 4th big meeting and departure. Right, we screenshotted, because some people were under the impression that that I didn't talk with anyone, that it was just me making decisions. And boy, did we turn their tables upside down with a short little screen share. And they found out real quick that they were either lied to, or they were misled, or they had no idea what they were talking about. Because we have 20 plus active threads of different topics, and Ghost went through a couple of them just to show that every single member of council contributed, and not just one time, multiple points of entry for posts they made on contributing to conversations. And I have that in, I think, a video too as well that I posted publicly. So, that was how we did it. And so once something was announced, what would happen is that I told everyone, hey, I'm going to write this announcement up. I'm going to write up a Alliance template mail that you guys can use. And if you want to do some modifications on it, you can. And then I'm going to write the Discord announcement up, and then I'm going to write a template for a couple King's mails. So I was the one who pretty much did all the mail writing, right? Even though I had asked a few times throughout a period of time, I said, hey, look, if anybody wants to write mails up, you guys are more than welcome to. Just let me know, or if you want to write something up, go ahead, right? And we can add it to the file. So those opportunities were always there. And anyway, but for all intents and purposes, 99% of the time repeating, I was the one who ended up writing the mails. And I didn't feel any type of way. It didn't matter to me if they wanted to help out or not. It needed to be done, so it was going to get done. And so, but I wrote the mails, and then what we'd do is we would post the template mails and officer announce. So that way an officer or a lead, whoever could get to it first, could send the mail out, right, to make sure that it was sent out at the soonest possible time. And so that's how we sent synchronized Alliance mails out, because I would post a Google Doc, so that way it would format appropriately if they're doing it on an emulator. And so we had all these steps written out. And then whoever was king at the time, we had basically a king mail doc of every single king mail we had ever sent since we got to COR. So we could also refer back to archived mails. And we had a top-down order. So every time a new mail, we just entered it, we put the number, and we put who was leading at the time, right? So it's just a simple archiving system. And then I would write those mails up, and then I would color code them. So if they were blue, that means they were ready to be sent. If they were red, that means that they had already been sent, right? So it was up to the king, whoever was at the time, to switch the color code after they sent the mail, right? So again, it's simple systems. But all intents and purposes, that's how the communication network worked, is once a decision was made, we had a discussion, we came to a decision, then I would write a Discord announcement, I'd write an Alliance template mail, and then I would write a King's mail that could be sent in our King's mail template doc. And then that's how everything was pretty much, at least on the high level, disseminated out.
Is that the same kind of hierarchy that you guys use for all other things outside of KVK?
What do you mean?
Like just regular council decisions.
Well, yeah, no,
Like,
I mean
let's say there's a rule change.
Yeah, no, I mean that applies, right? So
Same thing.
Yeah, so same thing. So for example,
Okay.
my position was more oversight. It was there. It was there to be sure that we stayed in line with what we promised everyone. Like that's the thing that sometimes alliance leaders forget when you're in a project. You have to remember and always keep in mind, what did you promise the group of people that are still here with you that joined the project because of what you promoted, right? It's like a president who gets voted for office, but they don't follow through on some of the things they promised during the campaign trail, right? How often do we see that happen? And so it's similar in that regard. Like, at the end of the day, I was the one who created the project. It had to start from somewhere, right? Everything that was written down was done by me. Policies, processes, conduct, anything, pretty much 99% of what went into establishing a kingdom, I had wrote up. And then disseminated that to the people that started joining, right, through the initial recruitment, right, before there was even one person a part of the project. And so from there, it was like the thing was is that, again, pretty much every conversation we had, for when there wasn't already something out there on how we were going to go forward with it, for the most part, the majority, if not everyone, agreed. So we didn't need to waste our time doing things like votes because everyone was able to talk it out amicably and in a constructive way. And everyone's responses were just leaning already in one direction, right? You don't really need to do a vote in that regard. You can just say, okay, cool, everyone agrees here. We've heard from everyone. Let me write something up, and we'll go forward with this based on what has been discussed. Sometimes we'll post a draft for people to look at. Sometimes everything's just clear enough, and I'll just write it out. Never got any complaints. No one ever said, this process is whack. Why can't we implement things without bosses say so? Never heard anything like that for 5 months, right? After everyone agreed to what the initial goals were, right? From jumping, from signing off as being an officer and being a leader, understanding everything that we were going to do. 5 whole months, no one said anything to me. But that's a moot point because that's aside from your main question. But yeah, that's basically kind of how things operated, is that think of me as like the nicest person in the world if you want to categorize them as a dictator. Even though I think that's a very rough word to use, that for the most part is kind of how the system was set up. I was there to be oversight and to make sure that we were keeping to our promises and staying in line with how we were building the kingdom out. And that was my primary job, was to be completely objective and make sure that we were, in short, as I said before, right, sticking to our promises, which up until I was ousted, we did. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's easier for some just to say, oh well, he's this awful dictator who just makes all these decisions and doesn't listen to anyone. But it's unfortunate. Unfortunate. So yeah. So sorry, Ben. Let me see what else you said. You said something like, you said looking back at DF. You said, with my alliance, you said there seemed to have been some problems there, lack of communication. So the thing is that there was never really lack of communication in DF, even though some of the people that joined, the challenge is that the really big challenge is that the people who joined DF, they came from a system where they rotated alliance leads, right? And they had 3-4 people, however many, because the people that joined DF were all from one alliance. They were a migrating group. And so when they came in, they were essentially trying to turn DF into another alliance with how the system ran. And what I had explained to them multiple times is that just like when you're managing a kingdom, there are multiple ways that you can manage an alliance. And oftentimes when you get into the whole mutiny, coup d'etat situation in kingdoms, oftentimes what it is that other people just want to enact their systems. They want to enact their beliefs on what they think are good things, or in their mind better than what's being done. And the shortest way to explain it is that's really what happened in DF. It was they wanted to apply a different system because they felt it was better than what was being done, instead of trying to ingratiate themselves into the current system, learn it, understand it, and actually try it before critiquing it. Right? Like the example I gave them at one point was, if you manage a hospital and you start at a new hospital for your new job, you're not going to go in there, or so I should say, a good manager wouldn't go in there and immediately start changing things. Right? They would introduce themselves. They would look around. They would shadow people. They would ask questions. They would try to get a complete and thorough understanding of how does that current hospital operate. Right? And then potentially look for areas of improvement without trying to change too much of a core foundation, unless it absolutely needs to be changed because an overhaul is required. But in most cases, that is not what is needed. And I'll give you the best example of this. Before those situations happened in DF, did you ever hear anything about DF's operational or communication structure needing to improve to the level or the amount that was happening after that group came in, before that group arrived? The short answer there would be no. Right? Yennefer, who at one point was an officer in DF, who later ended up leading one of the alliances, Farah, right, at one point, never said anything about it. Actually, quite the opposite. She loved being an officer in the alliance. I was the one who nominated her to be a lead. And so that's why paying attention to history and trends is extremely important. And the example of what you're pointing out is what often happens. People tunnel vision and they just look at the now. They just look at what is currently happening in this immediate moment, and thinking that because a few people are confirmation biasing each other, right, which basically means they're circle jerking to an extent, which is a looser way of me wording that, where just because they're saying it, right? So and then the narrative, right? You have to remember, these people have been playing together for a while. There's the system that they used to run an alliance is completely different than the way I was running DF. Yet before they arrived there, I never got any complaints about how the system was being operated, with the exception of, yes, missing a few IB signups, which I had already taken, I had already taken responsibility for that, of course, and had apologized for it. I think it was 2 or 3. It might have been 3 IB signups that were missed, but specifically one of them was because of a glitch. One of them was because of that IB signup glitch, even though it was done before the deadline. But outside of that, right, there was never any communication problems, never any other operational problems, nothing that had ever came to light. So, yeah. Ban said, sorry, you asked, okay. But Ban, can I ask, before I answer that question, do you understand that? Like what I just explained about the history there, about how they came in versus what was being applied, about how there was never any other complaints. Like, does that make sense?
Hey, boss.
Yeah, what's up, Cerberus?
Before you get off, I have a question.
Yeah.
About our.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, does the alliance names come out tonight or tomorrow? Since today's the last day.
Maybe tomorrow. I think it'll probably be a little bit. It might be later tonight. I'm not sure what I have to look at the deadline. There should be a deadline there. On. Yeah, it's GMT time. Okay, yeah. So it's probably going to be later tonight. As far as when I'll find out.
All right, no problem. I was just wondering.
Yeah. So worst case, there'll be an announcement tomorrow. Sorry, let me read. That's a different ideology. So that's part of it, right? Yes, there is a different ideology, but also that just different management systems can still be successful. There's not one management system that is above everyone. If you look at if you again, if I don't know if you ever went to go look at other alliances within 79 for how they ran their alliances, but Embla ran her alliance different than I did. Ghost ran his alliance different than I did and how Embla did. But it doesn't mean that there's only one way to run a system. If I ended up joining Embla's or Ghost alliance, I would not immediately be trying to overhaul their alliance. I would ask and say, hey, can you explain to me how this is ran so I can operate to the best of my capabilities within this current system? And I would play in that system for a while before I potentially decided if there was even an opportunity for constructive feedback or for areas of improvement. The difference is that when the group came into DF shortly after, they were immediately wanting to make improvements here and there and there. And the fact is that the areas of improvement didn't really need to be made because they could still operate within the current system. It was more about what they liked to do, which extends more to what they wanted to do. There's a big difference, right, between a want and a need, right? Did they need to do it? No, they didn't. Did they want to do it? Yes, they did. And that's really where the differences lied. A better approach would have been for them to say, look, things obviously do run well here, albeit the few IB missed sign-up portions, but we really like operating in this type of a system. Is there an alliance that we can join that uses this type of a system? That would have been the better approach for them to take, and then we could have accommodated that, potentially. Or if they just wanted to hang out in a shell, or a prepped shell for a while, right, then they could have done that too. It doesn't always have to be one way or the highway. And so, but again, given that DF had a track record of operating coherently, right, up until that point, I mean, history doesn't lie. If there were actual problems in DF or in me leading the alliance, people would have heard about it. Like, people would have been saying to anyone. I never heard it from anyone. No one ever said that to me up until these people joined and started saying it. Sorry, and then you said, why didn't I rotate R6? So, isn't it always good for an R6 to be online? I mean, to be honest, it's not a must. There's nothing that really requires an R6 to be online because an R5 can do pretty much everything an R6 can. The only thing an R6 can do that an R5 cannot is create group chats, sign up for IB, and shit, am I missing something?
Distribute core rewards.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, and distribute core rewards, right? So core rewards can be distributed after it ends, so there's no deadline on that, so you don't necessarily need to rotate. With IB sign up, you have a 24-hour window to sign up for IB. So, which again is more than enough time. And like I said, I effortlessly have acknowledged that as well. Which, if you look at the last few IB signups, I did actually sign up on time consistently. So eventually developed a trend of it. And then the third was about the group chats. Well, I already have pretty much all the group chats signed up with, so or created, and I had appointed an officer to be an admin of each of them. So that way, if I'm not online, someone can still add them if they are. So again, right, the point there is that there was nothing like at this emergency level of it being a pressing matter to rotate an R6. In addition to that, it doesn't mean that an R6 cannot be rotated, right? Some people are okay with some people like to rotate R6s. Some other people don't rotate R6s, right? I don't fault anyone. I don't say, oh, how dare you, not rotate someone as an R6 if you're leading an alliance, right? I leave that at the discretion and up to that lead. If they're okay and comfortable rotating R6, cool. If they don't want to rotate R6 because there's no real reason or need to, then that's okay too. I don't put unrealistic expectations or assumptions on people that they have to rotate R6. But what I will say is that there was a plan to rotate R6. I actually, again, similar to IB, had forgot to pass R6, even though I had passed R6 over, I think, once or twice to that new group that came in. I had forgot to rotate them R6 for COR when the contract rewards came up, because that's the other thing. R6 has to set the contract rewards. That was the other thing I was missing. Outside of distributing the points like Bunny reminded me of. So right? And so I had done that, I think, once or twice, but there were at least 2 times, maybe 3, where I had forgot. I told them, yeah, I'm going to pass R6 over, and I was doing some things online, basically fell asleep, right? And I had forgot. And I apologized to them saying I forgot. It was my fault. But even that did not impact us being able to still still do the max 3-star contracts that we could, right? All it came down to then was just a timing delay, right? It was just a couple hours delay, and when we could assign alliance contracts, not individual contracts, alliance contracts. Yet when this is the funniest thing, right? And this is something that they may not have said. Remember, there was not like a set person that we had at the time who was going to take over and do a specific event. Even though at a later time, that was something I mentioned about, yeah, do some people want to step up and do events? And that was something I had asked them when they came on initially. I said, yeah, do any of you guys want to do events? Now, at the time, no one had stepped up and said, yeah, I'm going to handle doing COR alliance contracts, right? No one that I remembered, or even if it was a reminder, had ever came and said, yeah, I'm going to do this. So there was this one COR where I had forgot to pass King or pass R6 that night before I went to sleep. What ended up happening was that I woke up the next morning, and some people were kind of up in arms about us not setting any alliance contracts. So I was like, okay, this is such an easy fix. Let me go ahead and I'm just going to set some alliance contracts. We'll send a mail out. We'll do an alliance Discord ping, and we'll get people on. And then here's the plan. Here's our strategy to do all 3-star contracts. We were able to get it done in a matter of like 2 hours. So I think the challenge. Oh, got a drop. Been a good discussion. Yeah, no, buddy, for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in. Actually, after having this discussion with you now, I think what I'm gonna do is maybe I'll ping Council of Kings and maybe try and set up something we can do with them.
That would be awesome. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for you to utilize some of those people to get you the information and do some of the easy work.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I think this conversation definitely has inspired me and sparked me a little bit more to do some of that. So thanks so much. It was such a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. You too. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Oh, man. So, yeah, this is the last thing, and then I totally got to go here. Sorry, so ban... wait, hang on, let me see. I got to make sure I'm reading here. So you said... Yeah. So anyways, I hope what I just explained there did a good job of it. Basically, the situation, in short, was just blown out of proportion with unrealistic expectations from people who came in and they wanted something to change, even though it wasn't a need for it. And I think there was just a lack of trying to really assimilate themselves, right, ingratiate themselves into what the current system is, which is really what it came down to. And like I said, the proof in the pudding there is that, they never said anything. That no one else had ever said anything before that point, right? For those 4.5 months, however long, right? You never heard anyone else that was an officer in DF say anything close to what they were saying, or in the amount of the people that said that. And then, then you said, let me see here. So, then you asked about rotating king. Well. To be fair. To be fair for first off, Rock King is different than IK King because you don't have factions, and the period that you're holding King for, I think, is shorter. I think it's a week, and then you have to recapture LT, if that's right. I'm going to be honest, it's been a minute, so someone can correct me if I'm wrong. No. I don't mean after it opens. I mean after you've captured it. So after you've captured it, you have it for a set period of time, and then you have to recapture it after that for someone else to be king when you're rotating. Oh, okay. So if no one attacks, oh, okay, got it. So it lasts forever. Then it's just that the bubble goes for a week, is what it, or something like that. Is that what it is? So like after someone caps it, it's like a week cooldown. Okay, that's what it was then. See, I was close. I was close. It's just it's been a while. So in that regard, yeah, what would basically happen is that we would have however many alliances make it into Zone 3, right? They'll each touch and connect to LT, and then we will either do a rotation that way, or we will use a King's Alliance, which is basically just another alliance shell, and then we'll have the leaders put their second or ult accounts in there, and then we'll just all manage the alliance from... Oh, we'll manage the kingdom from one alliance. So we can reduce the need to rotate. We'll just add in the leads and the officers from those alliances in there, so we can rotate amongst the current pool. Yeah, yeah. And the thing with doing a King's Alliance is that you can promote or demote someone to an officer position, and you can have teams. You can have an officer team who's there in case you need a backup R6. The challenge with when you're rotating it with one alliance is that you have a limited amount of people that you would give king to, right? You'd have your lead and then up to your 8 officers. But if you have a King's Alliance, everyone in the King's Alliance is a leader or an officer. So you have a larger pool of people, and you can actually set rotation times up with as well. So I've seen King Alliances be extremely efficient in kingdoms if they're set up and done right. But yeah, I don't plan to be a leader or anything like that, at least at the moment. So everything that would happen would probably be me just helping out and writing mails, right, disseminating rewards, things like that. But trust me when I say there will be a good plan for how to do that. So, man, I need to end this recording. I didn't realize I was recording for almost 2.5 hours. Great conversation. And just for the video, what I'll end with is, as always, I hope you guys appreciate this fantastic conversation. Not for the people that are here right now, but I hope everyone who watched this recording does appreciate the great quality conversation on kingdom management. And as always, until I catch you guys next time. Later.